Hello, good evening, and welcome to another edition of Resistance TV. We've spoken about the pernicious maximalist strategy of the pro-apartheid Zionist lobby on Resistance TV on several occasions before, but they've plumbed new depths now, and they're actually going after the Boy Scouts. I mean, I was quite amazed when I heard this story, and the person that they've targeted is Pete Gregson, indeed. He was the first in their crosshairs because of his criticisms of Zionism and his outspoken support for the Palestinian people. Pete had been a volunteer scout leader for, I think it was telling me 20 years or so after first offering his services when his kids joined the Scouts, and he stayed on after they grew up. Anyway, I'm pleased that Pete's joined us this evening to tell us about what's happened. I mean, our regular viewers will remember that Pete's been on the show before. But Pete, welcome to Resistance TV again. This is quite an incredible story, mate. Just take us through, mate, and then maybe tell us a little bit about, you know, your involvement with the Scouts and how long you've been with them and how you come to be involved with them as well.
Well, I mean, I grew up in Aberdeen, Catholic family in a Protestant city, and you know, there wasn't getting out and meeting people, particularly Protestants, wasn't that easy. And we were kind of, it was a bit of an insular life being a Catholic in Aberdeen at that point. But the main thing was that I got involved with the Scouts because I didn't want to be in the BBs. I mean, the BBs was the Protestant thing, the Boys Brigade. So the guy across the road joined the Scouts, so I went along, and you know, I enjoyed it because you did a lot of stuff. I was from the age of 12, you know, I did badges. No one else was interested in building radios, apart from the scout leaders. Camping, building fires, cooking, hiking, playing football. Played a huge amount of football, which up until then I'd always been rubbish at, but I got better. So, I mean, I developed quite a lot in the 4 years that I was involved, and kind of moved up, became a patrol leader. I didn't want to be a patrol leader, but you ended up being dumped with it because you were older than the other kids. But
yeah,
you know,
this would be in the 1960s, Pete, yeah? We're talking the 1960s, are we?
Yeah, I left the Scouts in 1973, so I was involved from sort of 69 to 73.
Right, yeah.
I was pretty active, you know, every Friday night. You know, it was a big thing. It was used up my whole evening, and obviously going away for the weekend quite often. And living in Scotland was a big introduction to countryside because they were always going up to Cairngorms, Balmoral, you know, the Western Highlands, the far north, like places I would never go. To be honest, no way would I ever get to these places. Going into the wilderness and living for a couple of weeks in a tent and stuff. Yeah. So it gave me a kind of love of the outdoors that I've never lost. You know, I still love camping and stuff like that. So I mean, I had a great time. Eventually, I had to choose, you know, between girls and the Scouts, as you do, because Friday nights, you know, there was a drama group and there were girls there. So I was torn, but ultimately, you know, I wasn't using it. I was led towards the female sex. So I stopped. And they were very upset to leave me because at that point I was a senior patrol leader. Anyway, that was in 73. And, you know, I did the usual sort of crap, went to uni and stuff, got a job and things. And I became a youth worker. Well, I was a youth worker from the age of from 1980 up to 2005. So for 25 years, I was working with young people. So I've always had, you know, a big interest in youth movements, working with young people and so on. And then after 2005, I stopped youth work because I just got sick of working evenings, and I had kids. And but my kids at that age were old enough to join the Beavers and the Cubs, and there was no provision in the area. I mean, where I live, there's zero community work, there's zero youth work. So we signed them up, and the kids were doing the sort of things that I used to enjoy doing, and that carried on up until like 2012. And at that point, I was at one of the Scout AGMs because I'd started taking an interest in how they were running, so on. And they said you needed a new treasurer, and I volunteered. They said, bingo, you're in. Nobody wants to be a treasurer. In every organization you get involved with, nobody wants to do the books. They hate them. And I'd been treasurer for arts organizations in the past. You know, it's a volunteer thing. So I was happy to take it on. And my kids stopped going about 2016 because they weren't really that interested. They didn't love the outdoors like I did. But I kept going to help out because, you know, it's really hard to get volunteers to run the thing. Then I was organising the finances and paying the youth leaders' expenses. There's about 50 kids involved. You know, it's quite a lot of local kids went to it, fundraising for them, submitting accounts for the Scout Group for its charity registration, claiming gift aid, organising annual general meetings, Christmas sing-alongs, you know, all this stuff. I actually got an award. Bear Grylls. Bear Grylls, look, he gave me the Chief Scouts Award. There's Bear's signature.
Wow. Yeah.
And it was in 2018. Because I mean, I just liked helping out because it was a charity that was, you know, involved in giving some young people something to do. And I wasn't mad about the dibbing and all that crap, but you know, as an activity for kids, that was important for me. And it was actually while I was last year, I was in New York for the Al Auda conference, you know, the Palestinian Rising to Return, which was really exciting because I was trying to get Edinburgh twinned with Gaza. So I went along to talk to them about using the internet to work with people in Palestine to kind of get over the isolation they suffer because of Israel. And when I was there, I was in New York, I got a weird message from one of the Scout district commissioners saying, you know, can you talk to me? I want to talk to you about something. And I said, well, I'm in America. And I phoned him when I got back and he said, are you involved with the Campaign Against Bogus Antisemitism? I said, yeah. He said, right, thank you. I'm afraid I'm going to have to suspend you. And I'm like, what? And the next thing I know, I got a letter or an email saying I've been suspended. And I was like, Jesus Christ, this is ridiculous. You know, I have never, in the Scouts, in the 10 years I was active as a treasurer, I never once mentioned anything to do with Palestine. You know, I didn't. I mean, the Group Scout leader is an Israeli Jew, and he used to babble on executive meetings about Israel, but I buttoned my lip. I never said a thing. This was insane. You know, they suspended me for this, for what? But then they wouldn't actually say what the allegations were. You know, it's just because.
Do you know where the complaint? Do you know where the complaint came from?
No, they wouldn't tell me. But it wasn't until a year later that I found out, about a couple of weeks ago, and I'll tell you about what happened and what they were actually doing me for then. But in the meantime, of course, the accounts weren't being done and people weren't getting paid. And the Group Scout leader, as I've said, he knew it was something to do with, you know, I told them, oh, they seem to be unhappy that I'm involved in the Campaign Against Bogus Antisemitism. And he wasn't bothered. You know, he's an Israeli Jew and he was defending me to the higher ups, saying, oh, he's entitled to his opinion. He's got an opinion on Israel. He's entitled to that, you know. That hasn't got anything to do with the Scouts. This is insane. But, you know, someone much higher up had decided that they were going to finger me for this. And the executive was tiny, and the executive committee at the Scouts, and more, because I wasn't doing a lot of the stuff that needed to be done, the others were taking on more and more, and people were dropping out. And the chairperson was so pissed off, she resigned at Christmas, partly because of my treatment, but also because you know, they weren't progressing it. She could see that there was no interest in resolving this matter. I kept firing them emails saying, what's going on? Why am I suspended? You know, and when I got a letter from Rabbi Weiss saying, you know, there's no way you're not anti-Jewish. And I sent that to them because I've been getting attacked with the twin Gaza and Edinburgh Council and all that nonsense. So I you know, that was useful to say, because he's a Jewish person, doesn't think I'm anti-Semite. You know, he thinks it's fair enough to criticize Israel, and that, you know, they got all this stuff, but it doesn't seem to make any difference. And I'd complained about my treatment. I'd actually written to the Weekly Worker saying they suspended me, and I don't know why. You know, I'd written to Bear Grylls. Bear Grylls, the Chief Scout. I said, look, Bear, dear Bear, or you say Bear, dear. I don't know why you put that right. You know, what's going on? You know, you're the Chief Scout. Well, do you stand by this? And of course, his office was like, oh, bloody hell, no, I don't want to get involved. His PA said, we don't get involved in internal matters. You know,
so they've run a mile as well then,
So they were.
I mean, this is really sinister, isn't it, Pete? I mean, you know, we've heard about how the Zionist lobby has targeted artists, musicians, got them cancelled from, performing in various locations. We know what they've done in regards to politicians, to academics, to teachers. It doesn't. It seems to me that there is no port that they're not prepared to, attempt to have some influence over. They're just not prepared to tolerate any notion of support for Palestine or free speech on Palestine at all, are they? I mean, when they're going for, scouts.
Because I've been doing the Gaza twinning stuff and putting the rabbi on tour, I was in their sites. Because what happened was that I'd put up this, someone had to do a huge amount of digging to finger with me with what they fingered me for.
Yeah.
So cast your mind back 6 years ago. In 2017, I wasn't involved in Palestine at all. I was active in the Labour Party, but none of the anti-Semitism thing had kicked off. I was passionate about supporting Jeremy Corbyn, and I was doing a lot of stuff campaigning. I think CND stuff mostly, and then I put up an advert. I don't know if you can see it. This was an advert that I put up in the Edinburgh Volunteer Centre.
Yeah,
and this was in 2017, before I was campaigning for Palestine, looking for executive committee members, because there wasn't enough people on our committee, and we're trying everything to get people to join the Scout committee. So I put an advert up, and it wasn't even directly on the obvious advert. It was just a bit you click through, if you want more information, and I left my home phone number. So somehow or other, somebody, because this is why they suspended me, it turned out, because I also had that same phone number on the Campaign Against Bogus Antisemitism Facebook page. It was hidden as well, because you had to click on it to get it. So someone did a huge amount of digging to go through every single thing in every single place that I'd ever been involved in to try to find out this number for the Edinburgh Volunteer Exchange that is no longer listed because the advert died. We never got any response. No one came. This is 5 years old. Someone with a lot of technology has managed to find something 5 years old, a phone number that was deep in a website at the Volunteer Centre in Edinburgh, and managed to find, that's the same number that was on the Campaign Against Bogus Antisemitism page, which doesn't exist either, because we've changed our name to One Democratic Palestine. Yeah. So those kind of resources to connect those two numbers. And they said, all right, well, you've been using the same number. That's making a connection between scouting and your political campaigning activities. I said, this is my own private, personal landline phone number that no one ever uses, I should say.
Yeah.
And in 2017, I wasn't even campaigning for Palestine. This is a completely ridiculous connection. It's like any volunteer gives out their phone number is suddenly going to be incriminating every other organization that they ever give their phone numbers out to for their connection, which is
totally absurd.
And they claimed that I was campaigning as acting as a representative of the Scouts whilst advocating a political position, but I wasn't. It's bollocks. I wasn't representing the Scouts in any way. Fair enough if I'd gone to Scout leaders and said, down with Israel at the Scout meetings. Well, that is advocating a political position. But my phone number that was there for extra information.
Yes, previously,
it's the most tenuous, pointless, ridiculous thing. And I'm sure if I'd been campaigning against Russia or in favor of Ukraine, I wouldn't be suspended now.
Oh no. Well, I mean, these double standards are quite breathtaking, aren't they? But I mean, what's the next step then, Pete? I mean, where have you left it now? I mean, are you just going to accept that, or are you going to fight it any further?
A couple of weeks ago, I got this letter telling me that I was expelled. I mean, I can't appeal, but I'll put it in for form's sake. But
who does that appeal go to?
The safeguarding officer. There you go. The National Safeguarding Operations Manager. They normally have to deal with kiddie fiddlers. That's the usual thing. Why the Scouts get caught up in this crap, because of the Scout leaders been
of course,
child porn or something. That is valid, or bullying or something, violence towards kids. I mean, that's their remit. Getting involved in politics in Palestine. I think that's why they took a year to make their mind up, because they didn't know what to do. But someone high up has been determined to nail me. And it's probably someone like UK Lawyers for Israel, because they hate my guts and they're constantly trying to get me. Or the Friends of Israel, somebody somewhere. But I think it has to be someone probably like the Israeli embassy, because the amount of technology you need to rake through that amount of data to find a connection where my phone number happened to be posted in the Edinburgh Volunteer Centre, which isn't something.
But, I mean, but Pete, it's not like, but it's not like you were holding down some high-powered position in a hugely influential organization, or that you had some sort of national profile as a musician and you were using that like Roger Waters or something. Well, you're talking about scout leader here, helping kids, volunteering to give kids an opportunity to enjoy the great outdoors and all the things that the scouts do. To actually target you in that regard, I mean, I'm just gobsmacked. I mean, this is really plumbing new depths, isn't it, for the Zionist lobby? We know that they're pretty shamefaced, but this is quite extraordinary, isn't it?
Well, I think the witch hunt is going further and further and further. I was watching an interview Asa with Stanley had done on the thing called the London Circle with a guy called Al Takriti, who's a really good interviewer.
Asa with Stanley being the deputy editor of the Electronic Intifada, who's just written a book about how the IHRA lobby brought down Jeremy Corbyn.
Yeah, well, it's about bogus anti-Semitism, isn't it? The weaponization of anti-Semitism, which is what's happening here with me as well. Yeah. And he was talking to this guy, Al Takriti, and he said, Al Takriti said to him, it's now safer to criticize Israel in Israel than it is.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed.
In Israel, people get away with it. Well, obviously, if you're Jewish, you get away with all sorts of things. But in Britain, if you criticize Israel, my God, you're cooked. This is it. This is where the Zionist lobby's tentacles, they've done politics. They totally control the narrative at Westminster. They're working hard on the arts, with Ken Loach and Dave Gilmore and stuff. And now the national youth organizations volunteering, it's like they'll stop at nothing. I mean, they're on the ascendant. And I think what they count on is the fact that they can do this. They can exclude you if you choose to support Palestine and you put your head above the parapet. They're saying, we'll get you, we'll nail you. Whatever you do in your outside life, other activities or participatory groups, or if you volunteer, you're involved with the school, we'll get you expelled. Because the more people they expel, the more justification they seem to have to expel people, because they're finding anti-Semitism under every single rock.
Absolutely. I mean, I don't know what you think, Pete, but I mean, I think that they were emboldened by the success of the anti-Semitism scam inside the Labour Party and the way in which the advisors around the leadership, Jeremy Corbyn, continued to press Jeremy, and he went along with it stupidly, to appease. These people are unappeasable, and they got away with getting Ken Livingstone kicked out of the party, getting him kicked off the National Executive Committee. They got away with taking on a very prominent member of Momentum in the form of Jackie Walker. Then there were many other people in between times. I'm just talking about high-profile individuals. Then they went for me as a serving member of Parliament, former shadow minister, Jeremy Corbyn's strongest advocate inside the parliamentary Labour Party, promoting a democracy agenda inside the Labour Party. They got me. Ultimately, they then got Jeremy. And, they're spreading their tentacles, though, now. David Miller, in academia, other people have been targeted in academia, etc., etc. And I just think that, again, I'd just be interested in your thoughts on this, Pete, that, if there'd been some pushback by the leadership then, I mean, it's speculation, I know, but I really don't think that we would be in such a parlous state as we are now. I honestly think that your plight now, being kicked out as a scout leader, I mean, absolutely outrageous. You can trace that back to the capitulation to the Zionist lobby by the Labour Party, by the Labour leadership, under Jeremy Corbyn. I don't know what your thoughts are on that.
Absolutely. I mean, the whole thing, Israel started this in 2000 with Dina Parat and the redefinition of the IHRA Definition of Antisemitism, which they launched in 2009, which made it crystal clear that they were setting out to say any criticism of Israel is equivalent to Jew hate, which is what they wanted. They wanted to make all us anti-racists similar to Hitler Youth. Oh yeah, you're just like Adolf Hitler, aren't you? Because you criticize.
Absolutely, yeah.
And they've been amazingly successful. And since 2012, when they had the big Tent for Israel event in Manchester, and they brought Zionists from all over Britain, Jewish people, representatives, to say, look, you want to push for Israel, this is what you've got to do. You've got to get yourself into the unions, get yourself into the political party, get yourself into the media, work your way into these organizations and start putting Israel's perspective. And they've been amazingly successful. They infiltrated
very successful,
John Landsman and Rio Wolfson right at the top.
Totally.
Zionists running the thing, pulling the strings of the whole carbon movement.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I mean, you could trace the
BBC. They had Laura Koonsberg, I think, a Glasgow Zionist. I mean, they just managed again and again and again to pull all the strings in all the places at exactly the right time, to the point now where the media's terrified of criticising Israel.
Oh yeah,
the BBC journalists in Glasgow, they say they won't do an advert about Palestine campaigners, because the moment they do, the phone rings off the hook. The Israeli embassy is so well organized with the board of deputies and 200,000 Jews who fight for Israel no matter what, that they will swamp any letter, any editor, any news desk, any switchboard with complaints. And what happens? Just recently, the board of deputies got Glastonbury. They stopped the carbon film from being shown.
Well, indeed, but just, in a way, even worse than that. Pete, even worse than that, in a way, was the fact that the Tolpuddle Festival banned the showing of that film. It was also prevented from being shown at the Durham Miners Gala event as well. It was, yes, absolutely, yeah. It was due to be shown at the Odeon Cinema there. Ken Loach and Tosh McDonald had been lined up to do a Q&A. Pressure was applied, and it was pulled. You've got Unite now actually banning the Union, banning branches members from showing the film, on union premises, or indeed even using union funds to acquire, book an alternative venue. And it's just absolutely ludicrous. But we've got to fight back against this pernicious moves by the.
I'll tell you what, haven't we? What I think the way forward is very, very hard, but we have to get more and more people involved in it. Like, I was reading a poll today, just published by Navarra and the Media 4 days ago, that said that 23% of the British public support Palestine and only 10% support Israel. And if you go down through this survey, you'll find on just about everything, there's a lot more people who favor the BDS, who favor.
Yes. I mean, despite their best endeavors, quite incredibly, really, that support for Palestine is great. Interesting you mentioned Navarra Media, because they joined in the witch hunt. I mean, they were part of the problem. It's interesting that.
But the survey that they've published, which
of course,
because it's not often you get surveys saying how many people support Palestine, and there's a huge number out there. And I think that's what we need to build on. So it's back to the old ways of, flyering. So what have I done? I've got a petition on change.org.
I was going to ask you about that. Yeah, so let's put that up. So what is it? Hold it up again, Pete. www.change.org/scouts IHRA. I'll get Gaz to put that out as well when we post this.
So that IHRA definition. So that's obviously where this is all coming from, and it's had about. Well, I've been doing this for about 2 weeks. I've got about 370 signatures. If I can get 1,000, I think that's possibly almost a news story. So it's down at the old ways. You have to flyer people and get them to do it. I've just had 5,000 flyers printed. Look, Bear Grylls, right. Please don't witch hunt critics of Israel. And I'm going to be flogging these for the next year. I'm going to be taking them around, giving it to people, saying, please sign the petition. Because people do sign petitions.
Yes.
You might all think it's pointless, but they do sign petitions. And if you get enough signatures, the media does take an interest. Because it's changed.
Well, I think if we can embarrass the upper echelons of the Scouts organisation, then it might make them think twice about this absurd move that they've taken against you, Pete.
So I've got two objectives. One, obviously, to stop other people being witch hunted out of the Scouts.
Yes, of course.
Is obviously a lot of parents, they can choose where they send their kids. And I'm telling them to send them the Woodcraft folk. I mean, there's only two branches of the Woodcraft folk in Edinburgh. There's a whole lot in Glasgow. But the Woodcraft folk is a cooperative movement that does all the same things as the Scouts. And I doubt if they expel people. I have written to them to ask them if they expel people for criticising Israel. They haven't responded, but I'm pretty damn sure they wouldn't. You got to support the organisations that aren't engaging in this bogus anti-Semitism nonsense. And I've got to say to parents, look, don't support the Scouts. If this is what the Scouts are doing to people who support Palestine, then don't get involved with them. Get your kids to join a different youth organisation, set up your own Woodcraft folk, because we shouldn't be putting up with this crap. That's one thing. Boycott the Scouts. Some hope of that. But I think what's more important is trying to get something in the media, because the point at which you get an item in a newspaper, Scout leader expelled for anti-Semitism, that is immediately going to get people's interest. They're going to look, Bear Grylls has been asked for a response. It's like, Bear, please tell Bear, what was he? He doesn't want to be involved. Suddenly he's going to be put on. No. It's to get them to say, we don't talk about disciplinary matters. But in a way, it also gives us a platform to say, well, this is how insidious it's got, that you can't even be a volunteer at the Scout group and complain about Israel. Because, I've got the Rabbi Weiss backing me up to say I'm not a Jew hater. If we can get some media coverage to say, even at this ridiculous level where they're targeting people who are volunteering, when do we call a stop to this? I think you have to tease out how outrageous.
Yes, no, I agree. Well, obviously the corporate media is one thing, and it'd be great if they were to take it up. Clearly, we've got the opportunity of social media to raise the issue. We've done this discussion that we've had this evening, Pete, and that will reach a number of people, and we'll share it obviously on our social media platforms. And this discussion will go out again as a podcast, and we can promote the petition.
I've decided that I'm going to go to the Lib Dem conference, the Tory conference, and the Labour conference, because they're all a week apart. And each one, I'm going to hand out these flyers.
Yeah, no, indeed.
And people who come to these conferences, bloody hell, they're not going to sign the petition, but they need to be aware just how.
Absolutely.
Because these are
I think if we, people power, if we can get people using social media to ask Bear Grylls for a comment, for his view about how it is that somebody who is a long record of working diligently in the Scouts, who is a political position of concern, as many people do, about the apartheid regime in the Israeli sort of temporary colony, let's put it like that. Try and put him under pressure, really, to say this is just absurd. But Pete, thanks for coming on this evening. Say again, sorry.
Ultimately, get him to resign, get him to distance himself from the Scouts.
Well, ideally, or get them to make a U-turn on this absurd policy. But Pete, how can people? Obviously, they've got the petition which they can sign. How can they follow you and your work that you do?
Well, I'm involved in this. The Campaign Against Bogus Antisemitism became One Democratic Palestine because we thought we wanted to try and do more for Palestine rather than just campaign against shit that was going on anyway. So we still try and publicize the bogus anti-Semitism that's going on, but we actually do advocate more. And we've managed to make links with groups in Lebanon and Palestine who are active in this sort of one-state campaign.
And how can people find out about that, Pete? How can people follow that? Is it on social media?
Well, they can join, We've got a website, onepalestine.land.
Okay. And what about Twitter? And are you on Twitter?
I'm on Twitter. I'm on Kids Not Suits on Twitter. If you go onto the onepalestine.land, there's all the links at the top, so you can look at the page. You can click through. And in fact, the Campaign Against Bogus Antisemitism, which is in the petition, if you click through to that, it eventually takes you to the one Palestine.land website.
Okay.
Where at the top you've got the Facebook link and the TikTok. Can I tell you something? This is interesting. We think there's not enough interest out there. But I had an argument when I did the rabbi tour. 2/3 of it, the way through it, I was in Sheffield, and there was a bunch of people outside the venue trying to stop folk from going in, and these were Zionists. But they were Zionists with Palestine flags. I don't know if you've seen the new move.
I did see your because you went and confronted them, didn't you? And sort of
they waved the Palestine flag. But this is the Glasgow Friends of Israel. The same. They waved the Palestine flag, saying we want to help the Palestinians. This is the front that they use to show that they're not anti-Palestinian. But then, I mean, I have arguments with them. I said, well, you're not allowed to show the Palestine flag in Israel. Of course you are. No, you're not. It's illegal. Yes, you are. So they have a complete misunderstanding of what's really going on in Israel. So these guys outside, the Sheffield, and I had my phone in my pocket and I filmed the interview. And then because there's no restriction on filming outside. You film anyone outside, you can put it on YouTube. You've not broken any laws. And they didn't know that, of course. So there's a 5-minute thing where we have an argy-bargy back and forth. And that's been viewed 147,000 times. And every day, 500 more people are viewing it. So TikTok, boom, get this on TikTok. You'll be laughing.
We'll certainly do our best to promote your petition, Pete, and would urge everybody who's watching this evening to sign the petition and to share it and to follow Pete and the work that he does in his campaigns. Thanks, Pete, for coming on this evening and telling us your story. Hopefully, it will make some small difference to what's happened, and maybe get a U-turn on the ridiculous decision to expel you from the Scouts Association, particularly after all your hard work.
Media coverage. I spent my whole life trying to get on with journalists. My ex-wife called me a media whore. I know lots of them. If I can get them, because I do lots of other things, and they usually cover the other stuff that I do, community stuff and things. If I can get them to put something in the national press about expulsions on kind of charges of anti-Semitism that are patently ridiculous, then hopefully we can just begin. Enough people do this, and journalists eventually, simply for the ludicrous story element, Scouts and anti-Semitism. I mean, where is it coming from?
It might make the appetite,
If we can get stuff in the media showing this is coming up, this is happening, then we have to get a fight back. It only works in the media. It only happens when the journalists feel confident enough to start articulating it. And if you've got thousands of people sign a petition, then they feel they can put the story out.
No, absolutely. Well, let's hope that we can build that petition from tonight.
It's a petition to Bear Grylls. Yeah, there you go.
Petition to Bear Grylls. Yeah, absolutely. Well, we'll put that link out when we share the link to tonight's program. Thanks, Pete, anyway, for coming on, and thank everybody for watching this evening. Hopefully we'll be back next week at the same time on Resistance TV. So until then, this is Chris Williamson and Pete Gregson saying bye for now.
Thank you.